Welcome. This video is on direct and inverse variation. You might be wondering, what the heck is that, right? I know. Let's think about circumference. This might explain what we're talking about. Circumference. Circumference is the distance around a circle, right? Here's the formula. C equals 2 pi r, where r is the radius. The circumference is always a constant multiple of the radius. Doesn't matter what the size of this circle is. You find the radius and you multiply it by 2 pi and you're going to get the circumference. Because of this, the circumference is said to vary directly as the radius. The bigger the radius, the bigger the circumference. Okay. Here's our first sentence that we're going to translate. Y varies directly as x. So when they have that phrase, that's the same thing as y equals k times x. Now this letter k, it cannot be 0. And what we call it, it's called the constant of variation. So we use the letter k traditionally. I'm not sure why, but it's called the constant of variation. Okay, this phrase is also the same as y is proportional to x. That's also used to indicate direct variation. So the word direct, varies directly, or proportional is the same thing as direct variation. Direct. K times x. Some variations involve other exponents other than 1. So we could have an exponent of a 2 or a 3 or a 1/2 or a 2/3. Okay, so when we say y varies directly as the nth power of x, that's the same as y equals, we always use the letter k, we always write it in the numerator. The denominator here would be 1, which we don't write. So y equals k times x to the power n. So when we have an exponent, think about, let's go back to a circle. Area of a circle, a equals pi r squared. Pi is the constant of variation in this case, and the area varies directly as the square of the radius. So square would be our exponent of 2. Okay, here's another phrase we're going to work on. Y varies inversely as x. So we're using the word inversely. That tells us that the variable that comes after it, in this case x, is going to go in the denominator. So the x is written in the denominator. Again, k cannot equal 0, and it's called a constant of variation. So y varies inversely as x translates to y equals k over x. So the k is always written in the numerator, never in the denominator. We could also use the phrase y is inversely proportional. So again, it's that word inversely that tells you to put the letter that follows it in the denominator. If the word inversely is not there and it just says proportional, then we're talking about a direct proportion. We're using directly instead of, this one is inversely. So this is our inverse variation. Again, we could also use other exponents. Y varies inversely as the nth power of x translates to y equals k all over x to the power n. Okay, here's some statements, just kind of a little cheat sheet. And this has to do with joint variation. So when we use the word joint or jointly, That just means that on the right-hand side, we're going to have more than two variables, or at least two variables other than the variable k. So here's a table. It kind of has all our options here. First one, y varies jointly as x and z. So we just have the word varies and jointly, no inverse. So there's nothing in the denominator. The only time we have a denominator is when it uses the word inverse or inversely. So x and z are all in the numerator, nothing in the denominator. Of course, there's always a k in front. We could have more than two letters. Y varies jointly as x, z, and w. So that just means k times x times z times w. Of course, multiplication is commutative, so if you wanted to write it in alphabetical order, that would be fine. The w would go before the x. Number 3, v varies jointly. So here we're just using a different letter. Jointly, that means we're going to have more than two letters on the right-hand side. We have, of course, we always have the x. Of course, we always have the k. And in this case, we have an h and the square of r. So that means r squared. So kh r squared. Number 4, h varies directly as v and inversely as w. There's that word inversely. Whatever follows the word inversely is written in the denominator. So therefore the w is in the denominator. Whatever comes in front of the word varies is always on the left-hand side by itself. So it's like an equals. You could translate it as an equal sign. H equals, and we have a v on top directly. That means it's on top. And inversely, there's a w in the denominator. Don't forget the k. All these problems will always have a k in the numerator. If there's no fraction, it's always just the first letter in the expression. Y is directly proportional to x. Okay, that's our y equals. The x is going to go on top. And inversely, that means now everything that follows the word inversely is going to go in the denominator. What's written in the denominator? The square of z, z squared. Here's number 6, y varies jointly. That means at least two letters, w and z. Don't forget the k. And inversely, that means whatever follows the word inversely is written in the denominator, x. Okay, let's do a little translation here. Part A. A varies, that's our letter that we're going to use in front of the equal sign, A equals. And then it says directly, so no fraction, because I don't see the word inversely, right? Only when you see the word inversely are we going to have a fraction. All right, so the square of r, so we're going to have an r squared. And of course, we always have to put the constant k in front of anything on the right-hand side. So a equals k times r squared. Okay. As always, you should always try to pause the video, try to work it out, and then play the video. Okay, v varies jointly as h and the square of r. V varies, so that's equals, v equals. Jointly means we're going to have at least two letters in the numerator. Nothing in the denominator because there's no word inversely, along with a k. All right, so we're going to have an h in the numerator and an r squared in the numerator. So v equals k hr squared. C, part C. F varies directly as the cube of G and inversely. There's that word inversely. Whatever follows the word inversely is going to be written in the denominator. So F equals, in the numerator we have cube of G, so a G cubed along with a K. And then what's going to be in the denominator? It says the square of H. Right, H squared. So F equals K times G cubed, G to the third power, over H squared. All right, same thing, just more practice. V is inversely proportional to P. Right, so nothing's going to be written on top except for the K, right? We always have a K that's in the numerator. It has the word inversely, that means we have a fraction. So V equals K over P. All right, part B, P varies directly. So P equals directly, no inversely, so no denominator, the square root of L. So not the square, but the square root. So P equals K times the square root of L. So square root, anytime they use the word root, that means radical. Square root, we don't have to write the little 2, which is the index. If it was a cube root, you got to put the little 3 there, right? Okay, part C. Y varies jointly as x and z and inversely as the cube of A. All right, so y equals k on top. Jointly means we have two letters, so x and z, and then in the denominator, cube of A cubed. All right, this one's a little bit different. This time it says to find the constant of variation for the stated condition. So we actually want to find out what k is equal to. That means they're going to give us some numbers so we could do that. So A varies directly as the square of R. And they give us two values, A is 48 and R is 4. Well, the first thing we need to do is do what we were doing before, is translate. A varies, that's A equals directly. So it's K times what? Square of R. So A equals K times R squared. So we've translated. Okay, now we're going to replace the letters that we have into the equation. So replace A with 48 and R with 4. All right, now we could solve that. 4 squared is 16. Divide both sides by 16. 16's cancel on the right. 16 goes into 48. You can use that at your calculator. K equals 3. So we have done it. We found our constant of variation. Okay, another similar problem. Again, find the constant of variation. B varies directly as W and inversely as the square of H. Okay, let's translate. B varies, that's B equals. We have a W in the numerator, and then in the denominator, the square of H. So K times W over H squared. Don't forget the K. Now we're going to substitute. Replace the letters that we have into our equation. So replace B with 10, W with 5, and H with 6. Now we could solve. K squared, 6 squared would be 36. Multiply both sides by 36. That way the 36's cancel out on the right hand side. 36 times 10, that's 360. Divide both sides by 5. And that'll give you a 72. So there it is. K is equal to 72. Example 5. Again, find the constant of variation. V varies jointly as B and H. No denominator. So V equals, so again we got to translate. V equals K times B times H. Replace our letters. 32 is V, B is 12, and H is 8. So 32 equals K times 12 times 8. Multiply the 12 times 8. That gives you 96. Divide both sides by 96. On the right, the 96's will cancel. On the left, it doesn't go, 96 does not divide evenly into 32, but you can reduce it. Yeah, so reducing the fraction, usually your calculator will just do it for you. Should give you 1/3. Right, here's another one. You should always try to pause and try to do the problems on your own as you can. All right, y varies jointly as x and z and inversely as w. Oh, there's that word inversely. That goes in the denominator, so the w is on the bottom. And the x and z are in the numerator. All right, replace our letters. So y is 15, x is 3, z is 10 on top, and in the denominator, w is 4. Right, multiply the 3 and 10, that'll give you 30. You could reduce, or you could just clear fractions. I'm going to clear fractions. Multiply both sides by our denominator, which is 4. 4's cancel on the right. And 4 times 15 is 60. Yes, 60. Now we could divide both sides by 30. 30 into 60 gives you 2. Yeah, that's it. K equals 2. All right, a little bit different this time. Y is directly proportional to the square of x. Now they give us numbers. They give us y is 36 when x is 6. Kind of like they want us to find k, right? But then it goes on. It says find the value of y when x is 5. So what they're telling us to do is we're going to have to translate. That's step 1. Step 2 is we're going to still have to find k, just like we were doing before. But then we have a third step, and that is to use that value of k and some new numbers to find out another number. All right, let's try it. So y is directly proportional to the square of x. Right, let's translate it. What does that translate to? Right, y equals directly, so that's on top, k times x squared. All good? Good. All right, so now let's translate. Sorry, we've translated. Now let's put the numbers in. So replace y with 36 and x with 3. We're going to find k. So 3 squared is 9. Divide both sides by 9, and we get k equals 4. Does that sound okay? So we got k, but now we got another number. We want to find the value of y, so we want to find what y is when x is 5. So we're going to replace k with 4. And we're going to find what y is when x is 5. So put that 4 in place of the k now. It's kind of like we just found out what pi was equal to. That pi was the constant of variation for the area of a circle. Same kind of idea. So now we can plug in the 5 for x and work that out. Order of operations says do the exponents first. So that's 4 times 25, and now we have our value of y. Y equals 100. All right, so let's go back over it. Kind of a few steps here. Number 1, we had to translate. Then number 2, we use the numbers that they gave us to find k. And then number 3, we use that k and the new numbers, in this case only one number, to find y. All right, I think we got this. Let's do another one. Y is inversely proportional to the cube of x. And y is 27 when x is 2. So we're going to translate. We're going to find k with 27 and 2. Then we're going to go back and find y when x is 6. Like a 3-step process here, right? All right, first step, translate. Y is inversely proportional to the cube of x. Inversely, right, you got it in the denominator. So k over x cubed. All right, now let's replace the y with 27 and the x with 2. 2 cubed is 8. And multiply by 8 on both sides to get k by itself. 8 times 27 is 216. All right, so now let's find y when x is 6. So we're going to replace the k with 216. So we go back to that original equation, y equals k over x cubed, and replace the k with 216. And then we could have done it at the same time, but I did not do that. Now let's plug in the x equals 6. So replace your x with 6 now. And work that out. 6 cubed on your calculator is actually 216 also. And 216 divided by 216 is 1. If P is directly proportional to Q, so Q is going to go in the numerator, and inversely, okay, whatever follows inversely is going to go in the denominator, square root of R, so not square, square root. And then we got some numbers, so we're going to plug those numbers in to find K. So again, number 1, translate, right? Translate. Number 2, find K with a given set of numbers. Then number 3, we're going to find the letter again, but with a new set of numbers. And we're going to use that K also. All right, so let's translate. Again, pause and translate on your own. Okay, P is directly proportional to Q. So P equals K times Q. And inversely, this goes in the denominator, square root of R. So K times Q over the square root of R. Now we solve for K. Replace P with 20, K with 12, Q with 12, and R with 9. All right, square root of 9 is 3. And we could divide 3 into 12 this time. That's nice. 3 goes into 12 4 times. So that gives us 20 equals 4k. Divide both sides by 4, and we get 5. So our value k, our constant of variation, is equal to 5. So now our third part, we're going to find p when q is 20 and r is 16. So we use our original formula, and we're going to replace the k with 5. Okay. You can do it in one step. I'm doing it in 2 steps. So I first replace the k with 5. Now also replace the q with 20 and the r with 16. Square root of 16 is 4. So that's 100 over 4, and then divide 4 into 100, which is 25. P is 25. Another one, more practice. Y varies jointly as A and B. So jointly means there's 2 letters at least. A and B, 2 letters besides the K. Inversely, that's going to go in the denominator. Square of C. Let's translate. So y equals k times AB all over C squared. All right, that's our first step, right? Step 2, we need to find k. Plug it in. Plug in y equals 42, A equals 3, B equals 8, and C equals 2. All right, work it out. In the denominator, 2 squared is 4. 8 times 3 is 24. 424 is 6. Divide both sides by 6. So k is equal to 7. That was our second step. Now we're going to do our third step. We're going to plug in the k equals 7 into the algebraic expression that we wrote down, the equation. And then we're going to use the new set of numbers to find y. So 7 times A times B all over C squared. So now replace A with 6, B with 12, and C with 3. Type it into your calculator. 504 over 9, divide it. 56. Okay, so that's the idea. Just remember the 3 steps. Number 1, translate. Number 2, use the given numbers to find k. And then lastly, use the value of k that you found and the new set of numbers to find the unknown. All right, so we kind of discussed it. There's formulas that are involved here. We talked about circumference, we talked about area, and there's many other formulas here. So let's just read what this says. Many scientific formulas are expressed as variations, such as the area or circumference of a circle. Problems in the homework may contain topics such as electrical resistance, lightning, drug administering, pressure, volume, and intensity of light. Don't be alarmed. Okay, this isn't a physics class. You don't have to know anything about electricity, chemistry, business. All we're doing here is the math. Okay, but the math is when you take those classes, when you take the chemistry class, the physics class, the business class, all these other classes, they need the math too. So what we're doing here is we're just making sure that we know the math so that you could go on to those other classes and be successful. All we're going to do is translate, just like we were doing, translate the statement into an equation and then answer the question. Try to use letters that are appropriate. For example, if they're asking for pressure, use the letter P. If it's intensity, use the letter I. Frequency, use the letter F. Volume, use the letter V. Just so that it'll make sense to whoever's reading it that they're talking about volume and you use the letter V. They could tell V means volume. All right, let's do it. Again, don't worry too much if you don't know physics or chemistry. We're just going to do it. All right, the frequency of a vibrating string varies inversely as its length. All right, I see the word varies, right? All right, so let's translate. Frequency. It's the frequency of a string, so we should call it frequency of a string, or how about just frequency? Yeah, just frequency. So F will be for a frequency. It varies inversely as its length. What about length? L. Yeah, so let's translate that. F is frequency and L is length. So now what would the equation be? Frequency equals F equals inversely, that means it goes in the denominator. The L is going to go in the denominator, and we always have to have a K. So F equals K over L. See, that wasn't too bad. Now we're going to put in the numbers. The string is 2 feet long. 2 feet, is that the frequency or is that the length? Yeah, 2 feet, that's length, right? So L is 2. That 250 cycles per second, that's how often it goes, right? How often it vibrates. So that's our frequency. So we're going to find K now. So in place of the F, put in 250. And in place of the L, replace it with 2. Multiply both sides by 2, and you get 500. So that's our constant of variation. Again, step 1, translate. Step 2, find K. Step 3, use K and any new numbers to answer the question. What frequency would a string 5 feet long have? Again, so the new number is 5. Is that length or is that frequency? Right, that's length, 5 feet. That's how long something is. So we have our formula, F equals 500 over L. And this time just replace L with 5. So F equals 500 over 5. That divides evenly nicely. Gives us 100. So that's our answer, 100. Let's see how to write it. Well, what was the frequency the first time? The frequency was 250. 250 cycles per second. So what are we going to write? 100 cycles per second. Just the way that we write it nicely. All right, this is our last word problem. Body mass index. You know, you go to the doctor and they ask you how much you weigh, how tall you are, and they tell you what your BMI is. Yeah, I try not to think about it. Okay. It's not really accurate though. That's why there's like those machines you could go stand on and hold the handles, and it'll read your body weight and how much muscle you have and water weight and tell you what your body mass index is. Those are probably much more accurate. The ones that when they give that to you at the doctor's office is not very accurate. All right, anyways, so BMI, let's see, it varies directly. So there's our sentence that we were looking for. There's that word varies. Directly, so that's going to go, whatever comes after the word directly is going to go on top. What's going to go on top? The individual's weight. So weight is going to go on top in pounds. Oh, it keeps going. And inversely, so whatever comes after the word inversely is going to go in the denominator. Inversely as the square, so we got to square something, the individual's height in inches. All right, so before we read on, let's translate. Let's see, BMI, we could use the letter B, or how about just BMI? That's okay too. BMI, body mass index, and W is weight, and H is the height. There's different formulas. When you go to the doctors, they usually give you your weight in pounds, or it could be in kilograms. So we're going to go weight in pounds, but depending on the, how you want to do this, there's different formulas. Anyways. Okay, so W is weight and H is height. So now what would the equation be? Again, varies directly, so K times weight, that's W, all over square of H. K times W all over H squared. Okay, so we've translated. What's step 2? Right, find K. So here's a person who weighs 199 pounds and is 72 inches tall. And they have a BMI of 27. That's not too bad. Okay, so 27 is the BMI that goes on the left. And the weight, that's W, that's 199. And the 72 goes in place of H. So there we replace the numbers. 27 equals K times 199 all over 72 squared. Okay, let's work this out. Oh, also notice if you read on, the BMI is always rounded to the nearest whole number. So that's for this purposes here. So if you get, for instance, this number 27, it might have been 27.2 or 27.3 or maybe 26.5, and it got rounded. So this formula, what we're doing is we're rounding it off to the nearest whole number. Okay, so 72 squared, let's work that out. 5184, multiply by 5184 on both sides to clear the fractions. 139,968 equals 199K. And then divide by 199 on both sides. And you get something close to 703. Again, I just rounded that number off. So if you do that on your calculator, it's going to be a little bit different, but we're rounding it to the nearest whole number. I think 703 is probably the traditional number that is being used anyways. So you can do this for yourself. Take your height. Remember, your height is in inches. So like if you're 5 feet 4 inches tall, multiply 5 times 12, which is 60, and then add the 4 to get 64. All right, so 703. So now we're going to find the BMI of a person who weighs 165 with a height of 70 inches. Okay, so put in the numbers, 703 times 165 all over 70 squared. So again, if you want your BMI, just put in your height there on the bottom in inches, and then your weight on the top. Multiply your weight times 703, and then divide that by your height squared. And I got 23.672, so again, we're rounding it off. So that would be a BMI of 24. So the nearest whole number. All right, that's the end of this video. Hope it works out okay. Again, try not to stress out about the word problems. You don't have to know anything about physics or chemistry or anything like that. Just try to make up letters to match the words that are being used, and translate it. All right, see you here for the next video. Have a good day.